Today we got Todd Brommelkamp with us. We take a look at the Iowa-Penn State matchup, and are the Nittany Lions a more dangerous team after the firing of James Franklin?
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent, Condon. That's Todd Brommelkamp, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We have a combined, 50-plus years covering the Hawkeyes throughout the years, and glad to have you aboard with us here today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We're going to take a look at our picks of the week presented by FanDuel a little bit later on, including our prediction for the Iowa-Penn State matchup this week. Going to talk some basketball as well. Media days in the books on both the men's and the women's side. We'll give you a quick hit on both sides of that and, of course, a breakdown of things. But, Todd, beginning today with one final look back at last week and just that domination of Wisconsin, I think both of us, because of the last, 30 years of watching Iowa-Wisconsin and what that rivalry had morphed into and what the Badgers had done, I know it happened a year ago. I know Iowa's had a few of these games, but still to see the non-competitive nature from Wisconsin was just absolutely bewildering.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I sent a text message to the group of guys that are over my shoulder here. We were at the Wisconsin game last year at Kinnick Stadium, and I said, I have a feeling they're not going to hang a 40 burger on Wisconsin today. And they came a lot closer than I think any of us were expecting to. And just an absolute fall from grace for Wisconsin. Where do you go from here? And that's a question that I think they're going to have to answer sooner rather than later. And quite frankly, I expected to be talking about a coach out of a job this week. I didn't think it was going to be James Franklin. I thought we'd be talking about Luke Fickell.
I do kind of wonder from the Wisconsin perspective if they're just going to make him wear it. Ohio State this week, Oregon after that. Hey, you made your bed. Now you're going to have to lie in it, that kind of thing. And instead of putting an interim coach in just an awful situation, just go that direction, if that makes more sense. Now, the other part of it, the athletic director, he might be in some trouble too.
And I think that's probably what's going on at Wisconsin is these guys are on the same sinking ship and they're all going down together one way or another. But it's a good reminder that if you've got something that's working for you, don't necessarily change for the sake of change. And Wisconsin's paying the big price for that.
I look at the matchup and look at the Iowa perspective of it. All right, dominating win, beat a bad team, do what you're supposed to do. Mark Gronowski, and I haven't heard many other people mention this. Yeah, we could tell he wasn't 100%. I think the most concerning thing for me, I don't know if you picked up on this, there were 3 different plays that when I was rewatching it that I marked down where he just kind of stumbled, as he was rolling out. And you worry about the knee stability. I don't know if that's something that can improve, playing week after week after week, and they will have one more bye before the Oregon game. But still, I'm concerned about that. Yeah, we know that he's probably not going to be 100% throughout the course of the year. But when it's that unstable that you're just stumbling, moving in the pocket, rolling out to your right, I think that's hugely concerning going forward that we're going to see anything close to the Mark Gronowski we saw, starting in the UMass game.
Yeah, I don't think an injury like that is going to get any better, but it certainly can get worse. And it's just one of those things where, as you said, every time you see him move, it's almost like you hold your breath a little bit. And he's so valuable. We've talked about this here on the podcast before with his legs and what he does with the running game, that it's going to be a major concern. But if I'm an Iowa fan, I'm a little nervous every time I see him try to be a little bit mobile.
Todd, you've said it. I've said it. If we've got the history to go and back it up, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And you hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. Just look at the comment section here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Our everydayers jump in, and we got a couple of them every day. Fire Ferentz. They're just ready for a change. And I understand for some people that perspective, just ready for something different, but the different can't be drastically different. There's a certain DNA. There's a certain way that I was going to have to win going forward. And regardless if it's, the next couple of years or the next 5 years or 10 years, even, who knows with Kirk, whenever that is, that you have to understand there is not a realistic path for Iowa to go out there completely try to reimagine what they are. You have to play close to your DNA.
Yeah, Iowa is not going to go out and fire Kirk Ferentz and bring in somebody like Mike Leach, who's going to run the air raid offense. So rest in peace. I'm reading his book right now. It's just, as you said, it's probably going to be somebody from the family tree, or at least somebody who understands that Iowa has certain advantages and certain disadvantages. And that was really, I think, where Wisconsin made the huge mistake. Was they went in a complete 180, and you can see exactly what happens when that backfires. I go look at Purdue, team that had an offensive identity. They tried to lean into the defensive side of the football. If you find something that works for you, ride it out. And I know special teams and defense isn't exactly the most exciting brand of football, especially in this day and age, but that seems to be what works for the Hawkeyes. And maybe you get somebody to come in and put their own tweaks on it or modernize things a little bit more. But it's one of those things that Iowa has an identity, and lean into it, because look, you don't have to look very far. Nebraska was a great example many years ago when they hired Bill Callahan. Just a complete 180, and they've spent the better part of a couple decades trying to get back to where they were. So if and when the time comes, and look, we're talking about a 70-year-old coach here who is going to make the decision whenever he chooses to leave. I can't see Kirk Ferentz being fired. It's going to leave Beth Getz with a big decision on her hands, but I think she's smart enough to know that you're Iowa, you've got an identity, and you stick with that identity.
Let's jump into this week. Penn State had an identity on Franklin. Good team, really good team. Couldn't beat the top teams, and that was their identity. And then it craters after these last couple of weeks, losing as 3 touchdown favorites against UCLA and against Northwestern. He is out. From an Iowa perspective, I've been posing this a lot this week. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Now, me personally, I never liked James Franklin. I didn't like his persona. I didn't like some of the things I read about him at Vanderbilt. There's a lot to not like about him. His whining, his complaining. It was just too much for me. And it's not my coach, not my kind of coach, certainly. I wanted to see him get his nose rubbed in a little bit this week. You know, at Kinnick Stadium, coming back and doing it again. So from a selfish perspective, I wanted to see him on the sideline because I thought it was kind of a dead team walking. But after what we've seen the last 2 weeks with UCLA, we've seen other instances of this happening before. I think in a way, this makes the matchup, at least from an Iowa perspective, more difficult that Franklin's not going to be there this week.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect this weekend. I mean, we've seen a Penn State team lose back-to-back games outright against UCLA, which they seem to have found a complete new life under their interim coaching staff. And that, to me, is something that I think you keep in the back of your mind about this Penn State game, is maybe James Franklin was a part of the problem. And now that he's out of the way, maybe Penn State can turn things around. Obviously, losing Drew Eller is going to be a huge, huge part of this matchup for them. But 2 teams in UCLA and Northwestern that beat Penn State outright. This team was number 2, number 3 in the country, preseason number 1 in some publications. And you just don't see that fall from grace very often. But what that tells me is they still have a lot of talent. Yeah. I mean, teams that are preseason number 2, number 3, they don't just lose all that talent overnight. So this is a really intriguing. I'm with you, Trent. I was kind of hoping that Kirk was going to be the one to be able to put the knife in and twist it. And I think he would have enjoyed that himself here. But not a whole lot of people in the Big Ten shedding any tears over James Franklin losing his job. I wish I had the $49 million golden parachute or whatever it is that he got from getting let go. But just another reminder of the new day and age that we're in college football, that you can go from having the number 2 or 3 team in the country to be unemployed in 3 weeks.
So, Todd, I want to go this direction with you. You being on the beat. You know, I go to Big Ten media days a lot of times. I'll go to, things like that. But I'm not in the press box. I'm in the stands. That's where I do it. You've been there throughout the years. There are 2 fan bases, media bases, I should say, that have always really bothered me. I know you guys had some fun with the Purdue guys, but the ones that have bothered me for the longest time, Nebraska, because they're not media. They're just fans. I mean, that's the way, for the most part, they're built. I have Stephen M. Sipple on my radio show every week, and I give him a hard time. And he's maybe the best of the group, but it's not a real high bar to clear. But that aside, the other one is Penn State. Because every year we go to Big Ten football media days, and they're bitching about something. It's always something with them. And I know it's a connection to the fan base, and I think you can make a lot of connections with the different media members and the fan bases that they're there for. But The Penn State media, are they as bad as at least it's painted in my mind? Because I don't talk to them in the press box, but I certainly see them at media days, and boy, they bother me just about as much as Franklin.
They were my recollections and interactions with them as they're a little high and mighty. They carry themselves a lot like the Penn State program does. And sometimes the media that covers the team takes on the identity of the program. And they've certainly chirped over the years about things that they didn't like about coming to Iowa City, or being surprised at Iowa beating Penn State in the past. And it's a press corps that mirrors its program and I don't know how that happens, but there's some pretty arrogant folks on that Penn State beat that'll be making their way to Iowa City this week.
Maybe tail between their legs a little bit, which isn't a bad thing. Todd Brommelkamp joining us here today on Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue basketball media days in the books for the men's and women's programs. A look back at that. We'll talk about some basketball. Plus, we got our picks coming up here as we continue. Plus football talk as well. It's a busy one here as we count down to kickoff Iowa Penn State on Saturday. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their trade master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process go smoother for you. The parts finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Need fast parts for a project? SupplyHouse has next day delivery. Talk about an absolute game changer. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5. That'll get you 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season rolls on, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. You're going to get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, it is everything that you want in an app. It's got a deep menu of betting, college football, the NFL, MLB playoffs, but a whole lot more. You can dive deep into there, and you can build yourself a same-game parlay. Put together a bunch of different things, maybe a touchdown score in the game. Put it together, you hit. You can take a little and make it into a lot. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving deep into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com today to download the FanDuel app and get started. That's FanDuel.com. Trent and Todd back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Listening on the podcast side, 5-star reviews all helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. And a big thank you to our everyday listeners, as we are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. Todd, back into it with basketball. So made the drive over to Iowa City yesterday and had an opportunity to have a quick one-on-one with both Coach McCollum and with Bennett Sturtz. Now, I'm a schedule wonk. I bitched in the beginning about the way that Fran McCaffrey put together his non-conference schedule, because at the time it was the RPI system. And the RPI system, when you played the dregs of college basketball, well, it hurt you regardless. You know, the year that they had the collapse late in the season and had to get shipped out to Dayton, you look at their overall resume, they shouldn't have. If last 10 games don't matter, and it doesn't, they say, it absolutely does. But that aside, they shouldn't have been there because of their resume. But a big reason that they were is because of their non-conference schedule. Now, that's changed with the net rankings. So I talked about that a lot. I could have sat there and I said at the end of the interview with Coach McCollum, we could talk schedules for like 2 straight hours. He is a schedule nerd like I am. So I think we're going to see a schedule, though, that looks different going forward. A lot of these contracts were already done before he got the job. So that's something I think that excites me. He talked about the UNI Drake thing and the like, and I know you certainly killed a lot of segments on the radio talking about that throughout the years.
And brain cells.
Oh, absolutely. The back and forth that happens on that one. But overall, this basketball team, what I came back to, you have a preseason All-American. You got a lot of guys that know the system. I think the transition is going to go well, as we saw it go well at Drake. I hear a lot of, well, make the tournament year number one. That's a good year. And I think they're almost selling it short. I don't want to be fanboy. You know me. I think we're both built that way. Yes, we root for the Hawkeyes. Yes, we went to Iowa. But we're definitely not fanboys. And I feel almost like a fanboy when it comes to this basketball team this year because I think they're going to be really good.
I'm right there with you. We kind of touched on this, I think, last week when I was on with you. But listening to what Coach had to say yesterday at Media Day, I like the fact they're talking about playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think, we talk about Iowa football and their identity. And I know there's still some fans out there that view Iowa basketball as a lot higher blue blood, not blue blood, but maybe the reputation's a little bit better than no. This program needs to play with a chip on its shoulder. And I think if you lean into that and get some real dogs coming in, and I'm not talking about Drake Bulldogs. We got 6 of those in Iowa City this year, but leaning into that chip on the shoulder and really sort of being a blue collar program, I think that is going to help them resonate with what's left of the fan base and maybe bring some people back into the fold. Definitely
need that. I hear it here. A lot of people got to know McCollum last year, Drake in Des Moines. What about in Eastern Iowa? It feels like, yes, did all the right things, said all the right things in that open press conference. He's been out in the community. He's been kind of doing all those things. Do you think that's translating? Is that translating what we're going to see a lot more butts in the seats at Carver right away?
I think there's some curiosity, certainly early on. And one of here locally in Eastern Iowa, one of the biggest detractors or drawbacks for Fran McCaffrey, especially in the last couple of years, was that he just didn't seem very accessible. And whether or not that was true or whether it was just the perception of the fan base, it was held against him. And I think Ben McCollum's done everything that he's needed to do to at least be the forward face of the program and going to Iowa baseball games and throwing out the first pitch and kissing babies and taking selfies and everything that you need to sort of do when you're the new head coach of a program that has been just hemorrhaging fans. And whether or not, if he's here for 10 or 15 years, maybe he takes on some of those traits that we saw from Fran McCaffrey and becomes less accessible. But this is Iowa, right? Like we're used to, the presidential candidates coming in every 4 years and shaking hands and pressing flesh. And we want that same thing out of our coaches. And I think Ben McCollum understands that, the D3 background and the year at Drake in the Valley, you've got to go hunt your own headlines, hunt your own press when you're in jobs like that. And I think he's carried a little bit of that mentality over to the Big Ten and Iowa. And but at the end of the day, and this, Trent, because we've been doing it for a really long time, the only thing that's really going to win people back over is wins and losses. And I've said this for years. I think if Todd Licklider won 25 games a year playing that watch paint dry system, Hawkeye fans would have embraced it and loved it, just like Wisconsin did with Bo Ryan. So at the end of the day, it all comes back to whether you win or not. And Ben McCollum's 0-0 right now as head coach of the Hawkeyes. So we'll wait and see what the future holds.
Stack up some wins. You're absolutely right on that front. On the women's side, here's my takeaway. They're going to be young. Jan talked about that right away and talking about doing all the right things in the community. I mean, Jan does that. She's just such a likable figure. She gives such thoughtful answers. It's not, and the same thing with McCollum. That was a takeaway too. Both the coaches, it's not just coach speak. Yeah, they have coaching cliches, but you can tell they're not cliches. They're actually kind of the bedrock, the foundation of both of their programs. And when I look at this women's team, young, a lot of new faces. Jan mentioned that might be some growing pains early on. I certainly think this year's team, though, upside-wise, has more upside than last year's team. That we saw what happened against Oklahoma in the second round. They just ran into a buzzsaw on that one. It was a bad matchup. And you look, though, at this squad, by the time we get into February and into March, this team might be playing at a higher level that you know what, this team can make the second weekend. This can be a Sweet 16 team. I think they have that kind of upside.
I do too. I think obviously a lot of it's going to come back to health, but if they can keep this group together, talked about this, I think the last time that we were on as well, with the sort of the mix of a couple veteran players, but they are trending on the young side. And I think if you're a Hawkeye fan, maybe you look at this as you get what you can this year, but that core that they're building right now, that's going to be, I think, 2-3 years down the road, that group that gets back into that Elite Eight, possible Final Four. I didn't think it was possible for Iowa to go from Lisa Bluter to somebody who's even more likable. But I agree with you. Jan Jensen is just an absolutely fantastic human being. She's a great representative of the university. And I think one of the big questions was, sometimes you see the lieutenant get promoted and things don't go that well and there's not any continuity. I think there were some big questions about whether or not she could keep the momentum on the recruiting trail going, and she certainly has. And that's the one thing that Jan has going for, is if you put her in a room with a bunch of strangers, you don't feel like you're a stranger when you walk out of there. And as long as Iowa's got her coaching at the level that she is and continues to bring in the pipeline of recruits, I think it's going to be a great season. And just got to avoid the injury bug. I'm really excited to see what Addie Deal can do this season, because she does seem like a legitimate superstar in the making. And Hannah Stolke trying to put a exclamation point on her Hawkeye career as well.
Going to be a fun year, and going to be some fun basketball on top of it on both sides coming up this season. I think we're going to see a lot of wins, certainly for both the men's and the women's program. Wrapping things up, we'll give our final thoughts on Iowa Penn State. The matchup, it is a big question mark. We have no idea what this Penn State's going to look like. We'll try to predict, though. We'll do that. Plus, we'll make our favorite picks of the week, all presented by FanDuel, as we roll through on a Thursday edition. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat the details. Mazda brings the same intention and how they craft every model. You can feel the craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. And you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to great control. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Todd and Trent back with you one final time, Locked On Hawkeyes. As always, thanks for being with us here today. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube, or a 5-star review over on the podcast side. All right, Todd, wrapping things up here. You said it earlier. Who knows? And that's the thing with this Penn State game. I think there's maybe the two most likely scenarios. I'll lay these ones out. Either right away, Iowa jumps on top and you see Penn State just quit. I mean, just absolutely quit, and Iowa rolls to a 24-10 kind of win. It's just a very workmanlike performance. Or Penn State gets a little confidence, they hang around and turn it into a 4-quarter game. I think Penn State, that's the game plan. They're not going to put a whole lot on Grunkmeyer. Ethan Grunkmeyer, the redshirt freshman, making his first career start. They're not going to ask him. They have two outstanding running backs back there. They're going to try to play Ferentz ball. And something that we rarely think about with Penn State, but I think that's the game plan here. Try to ugly this thing up, and for Penn State, try to win it late.
Yeah, I read a lot of quotes coming out of the Penn State camp this week about trying to match Iowa's physicality and, trying to beat them off the line and get back up and do it again. And this could be a real black and blue battle here. And I think the way that I see this, the key player for me is Caden Weechin, because if he can deliver some sort of early special teams knockout blow, that's the type of punch to the solar plexus that's going to just take the oxygen out of Penn State. The longer Penn State is allowed to hang around, the more scary this game gets. So if you're a Hawkeye fan, hope for a big return or a big special teams play by Caden Weechin early on, and I think that can give them the momentum to win the game here. But I agree with you. This seems like it could be a little bit of a low-scoring, battle in the trenches, which is not something that you have come to expect from Iowa Penn State.
Yeah, I think we could see 12-10, 13-9, something ugly, and to kind of ugly this thing up because Grunkmeyer walking in this environment, Penn State's not ranked, and Kirk's not going to get that bugaboo off his back in the 0-11 record, the last 11 against ranked teams. Still, this would be a pretty special victory regardless. And we know this game matters to Kirk. I mean, you could tell that sitting in those press conferences. It feels like the two that maybe matter most to him are Penn State and Michigan. It feels like there's always a little extra edge for Kirk in those matchups.
Yeah. Penn State is still a measuring stick. And you got to remember, this is a guy that was born in Pennsylvania who grew up revering Joe Paterno and would have loved to have played at Penn State. He likes to joke about how undersized he was and going to UConn. But yeah, this game still means something to him. And it did when Paterno was there. It did when Bill O'Brien was there. And then you had the personal rivalry with James Franklin. And again, it's no big secret that a lot of Big Ten coaches did not like James Franklin. So that's sort of missing from this. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that this was going to be a night game under the lights at Kinnick State, I would have been absolutely, two top 25 teams going at it. This thing's two unranked teams on Peacock. How did we get here, Trent? But I like Iowa's chances. And boy, if you bet the early line on this back in the summer, what was it, 7? Iowa was catching a ton of points, right?
Yes. Yeah, getting 10.5 at FanDuel this
summer.
summer.
Now they're a 3-point favorite.
It's absolutely crazy. If I had to bet this game this week, I'd lay it with Iowa, but I don't feel great about it just because of the talent on the Penn State side. Big Ten this week. Any games jump out to you? Anything point spread wise that you look at and say, you know what? I start on Friday night. I mean, the Friday night, Minnesota has owned Nebraska, and I'm getting north of a touchdown. Taylor's going to play for the Gophers. As much as I hate Phil Fleck, I absolutely think that the Gophers are a live dog on this one. Nebraska, they're winning those close games, but I think we're going to see another close one.
Yeah, I don't have the 7.5 circled. I've got the plus 240 on the money line. I think that's a sprinkle there. You and I are on the same page. Minnesota, for whatever reason, has really played Nebraska well. And it's just, this is going to be one of those games where maybe you got a lot of people that are thinking the wheels are going to fall off for the Huskers. It's too good to be true. And maybe they come out and they beat Minnesota. I don't know, but I'm going to go with recent history on this one. And 7.5 touchdown there with Minnesota. And Philip John is what I prefer to refer to PJ Fleck as. The other one that I've got circled is the total in Purdue Northwestern on the lakes of the shores of Lake Michigan this weekend, 47.5. I like the under in that one.
Mm-hmm. Can see that definitely and playing that kind of Northwestern style. Now, this is a big game for them. I mean, bouncing back after that win, they can get to 5 wins. I mean, I think that'd be eye-opening. You see that performance they had earlier in the season when they got blown out against Tulane. Definitely Braun's done a good job again. Maybe saved his job in the process. What other that jumped out to me, and I'm sure we're missing something. I hate playing favorites, but how is Ohio State only laying 25.5 against this Wisconsin team? I know it's Camp Randall, but still, I mean, just putrid. Nobody can move the ball against Ohio State. And this Wisconsin outfit's going to move the ball against that defense. I don't know how they score. I saw that team total at FanDuel has the Badgers at 7.5. I love the under there. I know it's crazy to do something like that, but could they get a fluky score? Sure. I can't see anything more than that, though. I love the Buckeyes, and I love the team total under Wisconsin, under 7.5.
Yeah, garbage time touchdown or some sort of turnover in the red zone that Wisconsin can't help but sort of stumble into the end zone. This game has a possibility of being a shutout written all over it. And, sometimes it comes back to motivation, and maybe Ohio State sleepwalks into that game. I don't know, but that was one. Again, I looked at that number and expected it to be a little bit different. But anytime you're playing with those big numbers, especially in college football, you've always got to have a little voice in the back of your head that says, watch out. But I agree with you. After watching that Wisconsin team last week, they're not going to be able to move the ball against Ohio State. They just won't be able to.
My final one on the national scale that I really like this week, it's the last game that kicks off 9:30 Central Time as Florida State goes on the road all the way out to Palo Alto. Florida State, well, we saw that quit DNA. That was certainly a part of them last year in that 2-10 season. Now, after 3 consecutive losses in the ACC, They have to make the long road trip. They're going to be sitting around all day long waiting for this game to finally kick off. We've seen plenty of teams from the East Coast go out to West and really struggle here. I'm getting 18.5. Stanford, they're terrible. The Cardinals are awful. Still, I think this is more the quit factor of Florida State. I'm going to grab the 18.5.
Another ACC game here. Principal play, talked about it last week. You've got Duke as a 1.5-point favorite at home against the ranked Georgia Tech team. Go with the unranked team that's favored at home. We'll see whether or not it works again this week.
Look at us, Mr. ACC and Todd and Trent.
Locked on ACC football.
That's right. We got you covered here.
Trent and Todd, you get first billing.
Oh, well, thank you. That's not even alphabetical. No, you get first billing. Well, Todd, we are out of time for today. Always appreciate you joining us here. It's been fun here these last few weeks, getting together and talking some Iowa football, basketball. This is the busy time of year as we get the confluence of everything coming together. Of course, wrestling season also getting ready to start up. So a busy time, and we got you covered here on Locked On Hawkeyes. He's Todd Brommelkamp. I'm Trent Condon. As always, thanks for being with us. We will talk to you again tomorrow, our final preview, a crossover edition, as we will be joined by Zach Sako of Locked On Nittany Lions for a crossover edition. We'll talk to you then. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Locked On Hawkeyes.